Hi there. In this episode, a review of the Lexicon Mpx 500/550 digital multi-effects processors, which I'm going to refer to as the Lexicon Mpx 500 series in many cases. I've owned two 500s and one 550 for 20 years, so I have experience using these processors. I'm going to start with the sound demos, and then I'll give you all the specs, features, upgrade paths, plus my opinion. Let's get on with this. Hopefully the demo worked for you. As the demos progressed, I added more effects than I probably normally would have added in a studio environment, but I wanted you to really hear the effects. When it comes to high-end effects processors, especially ones from this era and prior, the two big names that I think of are Lexicon and Eventide. Yamaha, Roland, and Sony released some very respectable processors. But this episode is all about the Lexicon Mpx 500 series. Sonically, both effects processors are identical. They both have 24-bit, 48 or 44.1 kHz A to D and D to A conversion. Dynamic range is 105 dB on the inputs and 101 dB on the outputs. Those are good specifications for any effects processor, and very good specs for a budget processor. Basically, the front panels are identical when it comes to the buttons, knobs, and the display. Looking at the front panel from left to right, we start with a rotary input trim that is smooth with enough turning resistance to feel solid and precise. Next, there are two buttons that include LED illumination, one above the other. The top button allows you to enter the editing mode. The lower button allows you to enter the system menus. Next are 4 editing continuous rotary controllers labeled 1 through 4. These rotary controllers correspond to 4 labeled sections of the display. Essentially, they are soft knobs and they make editing a breeze, whether you are editing effects programs or system parameters. Next is the display, and this has to be one of the nicest displays on an effects device from this era at this price. It's a 150 by 32 dot graphical LCD backlit display. Here you'll see information about programs, effects, routings, editable parameters, the VU meters, and more. Next are 2 more vertically aligned buttons with integrated LED illumination. The top button is for loading patches, and the bottom button is to toggle the effects bypass. The next control is a larger rotary continuous controller for program selection. Turning it to the left takes you to the next lower numbered effects program. Turning it to the right takes you to the next higher numbered effects program. This rotary controller is also a button, and you can press the button to advance the program selection in increments of 10. You can also press and hold the knob inward while rotating it, which increments or decrements in sets of 10, depending on which direction you are turning the knob. There are over 300 programs on an Mpx 550, so this knob can quickly get you where you need to go. Next are 2 adjacent LED illuminated buttons. The first button is dedicated to storing programs. The second button is for tapping in the tempo. It's labeled tap/cancel. If you press and hold the tap/cancel button, the processor will analyze the incoming audio stream and determine the tempo from the audio for you, and it works pretty well. If you hold both buttons, the device enters a MIDI learn mode where you can assign continuous controllers to parameters. Lastly, there is a power switch. Overall, the front panel labeling is clear, but the font is a little small. The only thing that is hard to read is the labeling over the 2 last buttons that say Learn. And those are on the Mpx 500. It's small blue text on a black background. On the 550, it's white text on a black background, and it's much easier to read. On the back panel, from left to right, you'll find a standard 3-pin IEC power connector. Next, there is a small rotary control for LCD display contrast. Then there are 2 MIDI ports, a MIDI in and a combination out-through whose functionality is selected in the System menu. Next is a foot switch input on a 1/4-inch jack, followed by SPDIF in and out on RCA connectors. With the correct pedals connected into the foot switch jack, you can tap tempo and toggle the bypass. Lastly are the analog inputs and outputs. You get 2 pairs of inputs and 2 pairs of outputs on both 1/4-inch TRS balanced connectors and XLR connectors. I need to quickly talk about the differences between the 500 and the 550, and it's not a lot. Both units are true stereo processors with reverb, tremolo, rotary effect, chorus, flange, pitch, detune, echo, and 5.5 seconds of delay. The 550 also includes a compressor, graduated VU meters, 255 preset programs instead of the 240 you get on the 500, and it also expands user memory from 30 programs to 64 programs. You can get this additional functionality by updating the ROM operating system chip in a 500. Lexicon used to sell this chip for about $30, but they're out of stock, and with no plans to create any more, it seems like you might be out of luck. But luckily you can find people on eBay, Reverb, and other online resources that have burned these ROMs and sell them for about $30 to $40 shipped. I upgraded my 2 MPX 500s, and I'm glad I did. Pulling out the old chip and inserting a new one is pretty easy. Just take your time so you don't bend any of the pins. Both units boast Lexicon's Lexi chip dedicated to reverb, with other effects being generated with another chip. This means you don't have a compromised reverb when other effects are also present, like some of the older multi-effects processors that you find. Aesthetically, both units have a good appearance, and the front panel doesn't feel cramped with the controls in a single rack mount unit. It has excellent build quality, and it's an all-steel construction, which is very nice. The front panel graphics are slightly different between the 500 and the 550, but both have a pleasing appeal to the eye. Now my opinion, and it bears mentioning that I did this review first and then a review of the Lexicon PCM 81 the next day. More on that in a moment. The MPX 500 series sounds good, very good. The reverbs are bright and relatively detailed. The delays and the other effects sound good too. Compared to the MPX 100 and 200, the 500 and the 550 are light years ahead in sound quality, performance, and operation. They should be, because they had a higher original retail price. And they are simply better spec'd technology. You may be aware that there's a Lexicon Mpx 1. It is technically similar, but sonically and programming-wise better than the 500 series, based on many opinions, including mine. And it's usually in the $350 price range, whereas the 550s are around $200 and the 500s sell in the $150 range. The PCM 81 is leaps ahead sonically and functionally, and I'm only talking about it because I reviewed all 3 of these devices during the same week. The PCM 81 reverb sounds denser, and the choruses and all the effects in general sound warmer. The PCM 81 is simply deeper, both sonically and in its programming capabilities. And you can watch my review on the PCM 81 when it's available. On the other hand, the PCM 81 will cost you 4 to 6 times the price of a 500 or a 550. And it's about 3 times the price of an MPX 1. The MPX 500 series is the sweet spot for getting a lot at a budget price. And even though the parameter list is significantly reduced compared to a PCM81. That may be of benefit to a lot of users that don't want to get into the weeds on the programming. The TC Electronic M1 and M1XL bear mentioning. These were competitors when the Lexicon 500 series was released, and both are good sounding with a similar feature set as the 500 series. At the time I was looking to purchase, I looked at both and I went with the Lexicon, and I don't regret it one bit. Generally, you can find a lot of the M1s for sale, from anywhere from about $50 to ridiculous amounts, because people don't realize they're actually not that desirable compared to the Lexicon units. I still own one Lexicon Mpx 500 and one Mpx 550. The 550 is looped into my digital audio workstation, and I'm getting ready to try the 500 out with my guitars. One last thing. I tend to think of effects plugins as sounding a little thin and not as warm as I would like them to be, which is why I have several hardware effects devices looped into my DAW. The Mpx 500 series are definitely a step up from plugins. However, I use the Mpx 550 for drums and use the PCM81 when I need depth and warmth. Please think about subscribing or just subscribing, and that way you don't have to buy me anything for Christmas. Anyway, that's about it for this episode. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in another episode soon.